manager, do you have a clear picture of your team's workload? Or is there a risk that some people are feeling overwhelmed while others are not challenged or are even bored because they don't have enough to do? Today, I'm going to be taking you through how I take the first step in managing a team's workload, which is to understand what it is people are working on. If you don't know me already, welcome. My name is Neve and I'm here to help you create a better workday. I am here today with my two fur babies, Loki and Freya, because they have decided that they do not want to leave the room. So we'll see how well behaved they are. And I'm going to be bringing you through a really simple way to get clarity on what different members of your team are working on. Now, here's the thing. I think that there's loads of templates already available out there in so many different realms like strategy, project management, and personal productivity. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Today, I'm going to be adopting the RACI matrix, which is often used in project management for this purpose. Now, let's begin before we dig into the details by asking, why should you bother? So why take the time to understand what people are working on? Well, here's the deal. Whether you have started the team so that you have been with them from day one, or you've taken over a team, it's likely that you're not clear on every single thing that people do. And that's because, to be quite honest with you, we accumulate tasks and responsibilities over time. Someone thinks it's a good idea to attend a meeting, all of a sudden you're a regular on the meeting. Someone asks you to do a task once, all of a sudden it's on your to-do list. You know the deal. So even if you have a general idea or a good idea of the different members of your team and what's on their desk, it's likely that there's some gaps. So that's the first thing. So we want to make sure that we're not making any assumptions around what people are working on and what they're not working on. The second reason it's important is because if there's people who are under challenged, then by taking an opportunity to rebalance the workload, you might actually give them a chance to step up and to perform better and to, rediscover their own motivation to be a high performing member of your team. And that's always fantastic. And finally, the thing I find most valuable about this is you start to identify gaps. And what I mean by that is if you know what everyone is working on, you should also then know who can cover for each person if they are out. So maybe they're out on sickness or out on vacation. And quite often we don't find out that there are some tasks which are not being covered until it's too late. And that creates unnecessary stress, unnecessary urgency. And I really want to avoid that. So by getting a clear picture of what each member of your team is working on, you can avoid all of that. You can make sure that the work is evenly distributed. You can make sure that the work is covered for other people when they're out. And also, if there's stuff that has crept in over time, you can decide whether or not that's work that your team should be focusing on. Today, we're going to be using the RACI template, as I mentioned, but we're going to use the modified version, which is RASCI. And let's begin by going through each of those letters and what they mean. So R is responsible. So who is the person who is doing the work? That's very easy. A is accountable, and this is the person who's responsible for signing off on the work and who's ultimately responsible for the delivery of it. So if you're a team manager, you might be accountable for a lot of it. However, if you have a senior team member, they might be accountable for some pieces of work and have other more junior members who are responsible. There can be multiple people responsible for a job or a task or to attend a meeting, but there's always only one person accountable. Now, next comes the S. So this isn't in the traditional RACI matrix, but it's very important. And S stands for supporting. And I like to include this because it shows who helps other people in terms of doing the task and then who can cover for the main person if they're out. So for example, if I'm responsible for doing the work, but you support me, then perhaps you can be my backup if I'm taking 2 weeks vacation. I love including the S for this reason. Next, we have consulted. So consulted means that you go to the person for feedback, for input, for sign off. There's a two-way dialogue needed to do the work. So for example, if a member of your team is responsible for pulling a report, then they might consult with somebody in another department to make sure that that other department's figures are represented correctly. Okay, so there's a two-way conversation. And then finally, you have informed. So in that example, your team member pulls the report, they consult with somebody from another team, but then they inform all the teams in the company of the report itself. And that's a one-way communication. You're sharing it out. The best thing about using this template to understand your team's workload is you don't only identify who's responsible for the different tasks, who's accountable, and who's in a supporting role, but you also start to see the different people that your team consult with and inform. So you have a better understanding of how your team interacts and collaborates with other people outside of your team and your department. And that is also very valuable. So that's a bonus of using this template. To get started, you can download a copy of the template that I have created, or you can create your own. And what you would do is list all of your team members across the top, and then we're going to list all the tasks down the side. To save time and to identify any tasks that you weren't aware of, I recommend that you ask each member of your team to fill out their RACI or their RACI, and then you compile them into one single document. If you want to take it to the next level, you can then take a little bit of time to review it for duplication of effort, for any gaps, and for tasks which shouldn't really be done by your team. Once you have this single document, it's time to start using it to manage your team's workload. If you want, you can take a snapshot in time, which I love to do. So file and save a copy of it using the date that is today, and you can use this to compare your progress over the coming months. Once you've that done, it's a living document and it's time for you to start updating things. So perhaps you decide that there's gaps where people are supporting each other. Maybe one person has got too much responsibility and another person has got too little. So by looking at this matrix, you start to form a plan in terms of how to rebalance the workload. And if you've taken a snapshot, the nice thing is that you can then come back to it in 6 months' time and see how the shape of the workload has changed. And it's also really good then to catch any new things that have come in since you did it the first time. Another advantage of doing this, there's so many advantages. And one of the best ones, once you have the point in time snapshot and you compare it to, let's say, 6 months later, you can use it to show your team members how they are developing and growing. So let's say the very first time we did it, I had 3 things that I was responsible for. But in order to shift things around, I took on some more responsibilities and I also started supporting other people. Now my name has a lot more tasks next to it and I can compare them now and then. It's fantastic to show your team members that they are progressing, that they are learning new things and taking on more responsibility. And it's also great for when you're doing your performance reviews and maybe when they're looking to go for promotion or for a change to a different role within the company. Finally, this is a fantastic way for you to feel confident that you know what's happening across your team. And even if things have to be changed, you know where you're starting from. So that when other people from other departments or other teams come to you and ask for you to take on more work, for your team to work on new projects, you can pause, go look at the RACI and decide, first of all, if you have the capacity to do it, and second, who is the best person on your team to help. So it's an all-round fantastic tool for managing your team's workload and getting the clarity that you need to be confident in the decisions that you're making as a manager. So a few things not to do. Please do not do this on your own. You might think that you know everything that goes on in your team, but I promise you, you don't. There's always something that somebody else is doing as a favor to somebody or because they got pulled into something for some reason and you don't want to miss the opportunity to catch that. So please don't do it on your own. The second thing is please don't save it in a folder and use it as a once upon a time document. This should be a living document which is used as part of your team meetings, and every time new work comes your way that you update it, and it really is something which shifts and changes as your work does so that you can compare those snapshots over time. And if you do nothing else, so if you are just getting started and you're thinking, oh my god, Niamh, this is a lot, like I don't have the time to do all of this, the very basic, simplest thing that you can do is give the template to each member of your team. Ask them to spend no more than 30 minutes filling it out as best they can and send it back to you. And at least then you start to get that picture of what's going on and you start to get that understanding. And then you can build on it from there. I hope you found this helpful. If you've any questions at all, please let me know. Put them into the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Make sure you download the template. And until next time, stay well and have a better workday.